Well, okay, so dealing with your arm situation the major league average is 135. I pushed us all to 160.
Yeah.
So 100 is like really bad.
Really
So
bad.
all this is on the lateral side.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the deceleration forces that you're not strong enough to resist. So you're just going to break down. So we have to get that stronger so you can survive. So think about it, if you're getting that at 90, 92, your body's not going to go any higher because it's already breaking down.
Yeah, it's at a baseline,
Right.
like you can't get any higher.
So of course we're going to work up and do things to put less stress on it, but we also have to get it strong enough because the major league average is 125. So you're well below the major league average on that. Now, like decent broad for your size. I mean, you're 237. That's pretty good. So you got some power down there. How fast is it? I'll see that when I look at your 10-yard and your rotational power. But I bet you and I want to see your total body strength. I bet you're strong. You're just still not quick. So we definitely could get quicker because we're probably going to find in your separation you're not separating as best you could, which can hurt your arm. So trunk rotation right is really poor. So you're going to have a hard time holding your trunk back as your hips open, which once again that's going to crush your hip and shoulder separation. So that could be a key link to why you can't stay separated, which I'm speaking ahead of myself. Let's just see if it's even here. So yeah, you can see you're not separating. So, and see, I can already see why you're ruining your arm. So this, if you want to fix your arm, this has to get to 140. This has to get to about 70. If it doesn't get there, you're going to keep destroying your arm. Period. You got to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm going to show you how to use it once you get it. But notice on your left side, you're closer there.
Yeah.
So your right side, maybe there's an injury, maybe just wear and tear is locked
maybe it's
up.
just tight.
Yeah. But we've got to always make sure we're maintaining that. If not, you're going to trash your arm. So your ankle's not too bad. Your hip internal's a little tight. So this femur here, this thigh, is going to have a hard time turning to bring your pelvis around. So that's going to be an issue too. If you're going to have a hard time getting your pelvis around and a hard time staying closed, you're really killing the hip to shoulder separation aspect, which when I say hip to shoulder separation, it's the counter movement. It allows you to use the kinetic chain fully. When you don't have a lot of it, you wind up trashing your arm. And that's what's going on. So your hip flexion, trunk going forward over your front side is poor too. So you're going to have a hard time really staying low and getting out, getting trunk forward. So it makes you want to rotate. Hip extension is tight. So because you're so thick in your legs and your hips, it is hurting you and your trunk. So mobility, you're gonna have to master the mobility here. You're gonna have to spend a lot of time on it. Like it's something you're gonna have to do every day.
Yeah.
So we get into a better place. So because you're already throwing hard, it's just here's the thing, you definitely can go harder, but you're already breaking down at 90. So what's gonna happen at 95?
Yeah.
So like we were talking about Connor, like he obviously wanted to be at 95. Well, if he's breaking down there, he has to constantly find the things that the weak links, and he has to constantly work on keeping them up. And the moment they come down, he's just going to get injured.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. Okay, so coming out of leg lift, like you're sitting on your back leg well, you're not really loading, and your hips are tucked under you. So that could be the hip flexion tightness. That could be weakness in the glute. I don't know. You want to push your probably knee forward, so you're a little bit more quad dominant is probably what it is. And you can see, even though you're trying to like keep your front leg from flying out by extending it, your back knee just wants to turn down really early. Like that's really early in the movement, your back knee wants to turn down.
Yeah, losing a lot of power.
Right, so that's quad dominant. You're loading into your knee as opposed into your hip and staying back. Right, and then everything's going early. And the fact that you're throwing 90 like that, you're going to keep having arm problems until you fix this. I mean, we're going into front foot right here, and your elbow's already getting behind your back, which means you're going to drag the shit out of your arm.
Yeah, my arm's getting behind
Look at this.
myself.
Look at this. You're dragging your arm, putting your elbow behind your back, and that destroys arms. So you'll never survive that.
Yeah.
So they threw you in the pro ball right now, and you had to double your pitches, you'd be injured in a year, right? So we have to fix this. Not only just to keep you healthy, but it's going to give you potential to throw even harder, right? So the point is, if we don't get this shin linear, if we don't get this down linear, so we can push force through this hip rotation, and if we don't do that and we just turn it, we just swivel it,
It's losing so much power.
There's no power there, and what happens is you start landing open like that, and what happens is when you start landing open, and your arm starts staying back. There's studies that show it's like every inch of your front side open to front side back, it's like another like 3 newtons of force. So you don't want to be in a position where you're landing more open here, and then you're trying to land more or throw your arm back more closed here. It's just too much stress on your body. Okay. The goal would be to land closed and power from behind, and then this syncs up better and follows that energy, right? So just look how short your stride is.
Yeah.
Because you never got the shin linear. You didn't keep the hips moving forward and down the same rate, lowering the shin so you can power through a long stride and push energy through the hip up the trunk. So if we look at your kinematic sequence, wow, you can see it really here. You're just so big. That's why the point is, if you were half your size, you'd probably be throwing half your speed. It would drop dramatically. You're just so big, you're getting away with a lot.
Yeah.
Like this is really poor. That hip. So what this is a graph of speeds over time. So this is time in the graph, this is degrees per second. So when something goes up and down really quick, it's going fast, like your arm, the yellow. But the red is your hip, the green is your trunk. The trunk is going faster than the hip, which is normal. But look at the hip. The speeds are starting, slowly starting, then they break. It basically, once this hip goes to here, probably because remember we said your thigh only could go 30 degrees? So that's the 30 degrees, now you're stuck. Now it literally slows you down. It's like, whoa, can't go any farther. Slows you down, then you land, then it picks back up again, and then your trunk peaks. And notice here, see the blue, which is your glove? It always happens when the hips run out of power, the glove takes over. Notice how the glove is mimicking the peak that the hip should have had. Because it's helping pull the hip around. But you don't want to do that because then what it called hyperangulates the arm. It drags the arm because it throws everything out of sequence because now the energy is not coming up. It's now being pulled around. Okay. So, but remember, high velocity guys are going to have a larger margin between when their hips peak here and their trunks peak. You'll typically see like an elite high velocity guy, he'd have the hip here and the trunk would be out here peaking, and that's the best use of the kinetic chain. That guy would have a completely free and healthy arm. You're overcompensating because your legs running out of power, and you're yanking the glove and you're yanking on your arm, and all your energy's bunched up here, and it's putting massive stress on your upper body to overcompensate. Like even seeing your elbow get out like that is just so bad for your elbow, man. So, and also too, remember we talked about you didn't have the trunk or the hip flexion to go forward. So, and you can't go forward, so you're trying to get around and go the other way. So think about it, if we build the mobility to get down into those, what I said, linear force vectors, and then drive and power a long stride, and you have the trunk rotation to counter back. Now your arm has all this time to freely move, and you get stronger. Now you're like
stronger. Everything.
Now you're like pumping 95, 98, and you feel great. But if you keep, you're struggling with this mobility, and you keep yanking and pulling and dragging and pushing, it's just not. You're not going to survive it. Okay. Now, as far as your spin, I mean, great spin. I mean, you weren't throwing 100, but you were 88, 90. That's average spin for that. Really good spin efficiency, which means when you went to release, so you did a good job here. When you went to release, your forearm came over to pronation. You're not swinging around to pronation, so it really cleans up your spin. But the problem is you're splitting vertical to horizontal movements. That's going to create a flatter ball.
You can just tell, like, I'm completely this
way.
Right.
So we got to go one way or the other. We got to either go vertical or horizontal. We don't want to just go in between both. So we got to pick a way. Obviously, we'd like to go horizontal. What would help is if my arm slot came up a little bit. So if, let's see, I mean, it looks higher here than it's showing. Maybe it's because you do kind of get out. So your elbow comes up, but you get more extended. So you're really technically, if we turned it, you're technically sidearm. So if that's because so much rotation. So right, when where the arm extends is where the energy is going. If I'm pulling here, my arm's extending here. If I'm moving here, my arm's extending out there. So the more we can get the trunk going forward and not off, then we should get the spin axis or this slot up. We should push more vertical brake, and then you're going to start getting a lot of vertical brake and not just this in between both.
Yeah.
So I think
that's why I get a lot of run on my
that way.
ball. So I'm like,
yeah, but it's kind of a slow run. It's not like a whoo.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we want. We want that boom or that boom. So we can't split them. We split them. It creates that slow run. All right. So I think you're going to see a lot of improvements, but it's linked to the mobility. It's linked to the speed of the movement. I think if we do that, you're going to see huge gains.